Welcome to the MOBILETrak Material Charge Out Module walkthrough, specifically for a real-time instance of Meridian's UPN. Getting started, let's take a look at some of the settings that will be affecting our charge outs. Display default GL account. Because most utilities using MOBILETrak have a single account for work orders or jobs, MOBILETrak can store and pre-fill the account number for your charge out. Enable division and enable department. If your organization has multiple projects or departments, these settings make it easy to be specific about which one you wanted to use. Enable activity code. This setting allows you to choose whether or not this field is present on the charge out screen for adding a task. Edit activity code only when required. If the enable activity code setting is turned on, this setting makes it so the user is only required to enter a task if UPN requires it. Show on-hand quantity. This setting determines whether or not the items on the charge out screen show their current quantities or not. Retain notes. This setting makes the notes field on the charge out persistent. If this setting is turned off, the notes field clears after every entry. By turning this on, whatever is entered into the notes field persists until the user changes it, or we leave the page completely. Warn on negative quantity. This setting provides a warning to the user whenever they are trying to charge out more quantity than what currently exists on hand in UPN. The user can click OK if they wanted to review the quantity they entered, or clear to clear out the field and enter in a new quantity. Barcode user in description and barcode transaction in description. These settings can remain turned off since they are not applicable to UPN customers. Let's see how all these settings affect the material charge out when turned on or off. Display default GL account. When turned on, the user will see that the account number has been automatically filled in by MOBILETrak. When turned off, the user will need to type in or scan in this information. The default GL account is manually set by the MOBILETrak team. If you need to change this account number, please let us know. Enable division and enable department. Turned on, we see that MOBILETrak is asking for the user to enter in the division or project and the department for the charge out. When turned off, we will not see these two fields. As an alternative, division or project and department can be added to the beginning of the account number instead of being entered into these separate fields. Enable activity code. When turned on, MOBILETrak will allow the user to enter a valid task. When turned off, the user will not see the field. However, if a task is required based on the information entered, the user will see a warning message indicating that a task is required and will need to turn on the setting to enter it. Edit activity code only when required. When turned on, the user will see not required in the activity code field unless the validation coming back from UPN indicates that a task is required. Note here that for the edit activity code only when required setting, it will not display the activity code field unless you also have the enable activity code setting turned on. Show on-hand quantity. Turned on, we see here that MOBILETrak is showing us the quantity pulled from the live counts for this part in UPN. When turned off, no quantity for this part will be displayed. Retain notes. Turned on, we see that our notes field content is persisting after every entry. When it is turned off, we see that the notes field is cleared after our entry. Warn on negative quantity. When turned on, we see that MOBILETrak is warning us when we try to charge out a higher quantity than the on-hand quantity in UPN. Turned off, we will not see this warning. For the sake of our demonstration, we will apply the settings as follows. We will turn off the enable division and enable department settings. We will turn on the display default GL account, show on-hand quantity, retain notes, warn on negative quantity, and both activity code settings. To navigate to the material charge out module, follow these steps. Inventory. Material charge out. Then select the type of charge out you'd like to perform. In the material charge out module, you have the ability to charge out material to either a specific work order number or a general ledger account such as overhead maintenance or material stores expense. When we have work order selected, we see fields for entering a work order number in the general ledger, or GL, account number. Since we have the display default GL account option turned on, the account number here is already filled in. You will notice that at the moment, the entry field is highlighted red. This is because the validation that we are getting back from UPN requires a work order or job number to process. Once I type in a good work order value, you will notice both the work order field and the account field are now highlighted in green, and the work order description is being displayed. After we have entered a valid work order or job number and account number, we can begin our process of charging out material. I am wanting to charge out some conduit to work order 67847. When I scan in or type in the part number, we see the item description and the on-hand quantity for conduit in my current location. I wanted to charge out a quantity of 100. Now when I tap the Submit Charge Out button, these changes get sent immediately to UPN. You will notice when I click the Submit button, the work order and account information stayed. It's just the bottom section of the page that is reset. This is because MOBILETrak is expecting multiple items to be sent to this work order, so it does not make the user re-enter the work order number and account number for every item. Now let's move over to the general ledger. On this screen, you will notice that the work order field goes away and the account field is once again red. Because our display default GL account setting is turned on and our default GL account number is 10720, which requires a work order number, we see that the field is underlined in red. I will simply delete the 10720 and enter in a valid account number. When I enter the valid account number, it goes green again. I'm now going to charge out conduit to the general ledger. Notice that when I type in the same part number as before, our on-hand quantity is changed because of the charge out we performed earlier. MOBILETrak is integrated with the real-time counts in UPN, pulling our new on-hand quantity and displaying that on the screen. For general ledger chargeouts, an optional voucher field appears. This allows the user to enter in a voucher number to be included with a major material item chargeout. Same as charging out material to a work order, when I tap the Submit Charge Out button, these changes get sent immediately to UPN, affecting inventory numbers in real time. We are able to quickly reset our charge out screen. Next to the Submit button is the Reset Work Order button. This clears out the work order field at the top and scrolls the user to the top of the page. This is mostly for smaller screen devices, so the user does not have to drag the screen down to get to the work order and account fields when they need to change them. Process inventory transactions in your warehouse in real time at the point of activity, reducing accounting errors straight from the device in your pocket with MOBILETrak WMS. If your utility is looking to maximize efficiency and minimize errors, contact ID Solutions for information on MOBILETrak WMS.